This is Hidden Killers Week in Review.
A look back at the most prolific stories of the week.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski.
Featuring author, psychologist, and daily contributor, Siobhan Scott.
Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt, they are facing their moment in court, their moment of reckoning in terms of sentencing. And that's what we learned is going to be happening to them. At least 4 years, 4 to 60 years per person, depending on how the parole board rules. This is who's going to decide ultimately how long they stay in prison. The sentence is 1 to 15 years on 4 consecutive counts of abuse. Joining me to discuss, Siobhan Scott, psychotherapist and author. This is one I would be happy if they just said, we're sorry, we don't have any place for you anymore. We're going to reenact the death penalty for far lower causes, because I don't see a purpose for people who do this sort of horrible, horrible thing to their children, as Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt both admitted to doing. But here we have 4 to 60 years. What's your thoughts on the sentencing and how this may all play out for them?
Well, it was fascinating to watch Ruby's speech in court at sentencing. And it struck me as a classic coached response for someone who wants to make a favorable impression on the parole board. I used to work for the conditional release program in California, and it's a complicated job, but it was forensic in the setting of the state mental hospitals where people had committed violent crimes, mostly felons, and they were deemed to be criminally insane.
Sure.
And part of my role there was to try to determine which people should be considered as eligible for getting out. And there were 3 things that we looked for. The first was responsibility, that they took full accountability for every awful thing they had done. They had to own it, and own it in a very specific way. Then they had to have insight, meaning they had to at least be able to verbalize, this is why I did what I did. I was hallucinating at the time. I wasn't taking my medication. Whatever it was, they had to be able to describe where they went wrong, what their thinking was. And then they had to be remorseful. They had to, express regret and show that they really were aware of the impact that their crimes had had. Boy, she ticked the boxes on that. Ruby just nailed it. And I think she's narcissistic, but she is not stupid. And if she wants to get out in 3 years or 3.5 years, whatever it would end up being, the most lenient sentence. Yeah. This was the speech to the parole board that a person who was very strategic would give.
I mean, it seems like, I don't know, do parole boards not see through those sort of things? I mean, if you're ticking those boxes, or do they just, they already have overcrowding problems. They're like, well, they seem to they at least know the speech. A lot of them don't. Let's let this one go. It seems very hollow. That's the way it felt when she gave the speech in prison the other day. Yeah. She acted well. The acting was okay. It was, like community theater, great, but it was there. Do they see through this sort of thing? What do you see happening here when it comes to the parole board that's going to decide her fate ultimately? Obviously, they have to take into account her actions as well, and what she's admitted to doing. Yeah.
It's, I think, very subjective with every parole board. And are there some that would see through it? Yeah, probably most. How would that impact them? And to what extent is it just, no, she has said all the things that we need to hear, and she says it in a convincing way, and therefore we're, checking the boxes off and letting her go. So it seemed entirely insincere and manipulative to me.
We also, of course, have Jodi Hildebrandt, who gave her statement too. I sincerely loved these children, is what she said. One of the reasons I didn't go to trial is I didn't want them to relive this, making herself kind of the hero, making it about her.
Yes.
How narcissistic can you get in that sort of a statement? Or do you think it's fair that both of them received the exact same sentence?
Yeah, I think they were both involved to, extreme degrees. So that didn't strike me as off. And the thing about her loving the kids, she was a wannabe cult leader. I
Yeah.
mean, she had her control and power going. And in cults, kids are often abused in the name of love and discipline. And this is just kind of classic cult behavior. So that didn't surprise me that she said that, but that's, on the same level as David Koresh, loving the children in these bizarre ways.
Eventually, they're going to get out. Who knows what journey or path they may go on. Ruby didn't seem to be the one who was trying to start the cult. She seemed almost kind of drawn in, and Jodi rather seemed to have kind of fed a lot of those needs that she was so desperately wanting. Jodi is the one I'm more concerned about when she gets out of prison. Is there anything stopping her from starting another therapy business or starting another life coaching business? Because I'm going to guess there's probably not a real clear way for her to get licensed again. At least I hope to God there isn't. But there ain't nothing stopping her from going online to, Buck's certification for being a life coach and then starting up maybe under a different name. I mean, she could realistically be out there doing this again very soon, could she not?
Yeah, I don't think that she would be able to go this direction. I see her more, this just occurred to me, more like in selling Amway in a multi-level marketing scheme, being the queen of something like that, selling nutritional supplements or weight loss products. Because, she's narcissistic and manipulative and wants to be an entrepreneur, but she will never probably be in a capacity where she would be trusted to work with people in any kind of a counseling setting. Although, legally she could be a life coach.
I mean, people don't know her story, changes her name up a little bit, maybe changes her looks a bit. I mean, people will go for that, I guess, at some point. But I think maybe Amway or
I think Amway would be a really good fit for her.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.